Alright, so the last game of tonight's action have just finished around MLS, and I forgot this match between the Quakes versus the Timbers was a national televised game as it was on FS1, which means that most likely this game is going to be finished 10 to 15 minutes later than I anticipated, which is exactly what happened as this game didn't finish until around 8:50 p.m. And then I also had to write down my notes for the last two games on the board because I was very keeping a close eye on the second half of this game, and in the end, I was kind of left frustrated with how this game, of course, play out. But we, of course, will get to that after we look at the first two games. And since there's only 3 games to talk about, like what I did for the preview, I am not going to do the timestamp for this review because this should be a relatively short review video. But the first game we're going to be talking about is FC Dallas versus the Colorado Rapids, and this was a night to remember for Santiago Mosquera as he would score a hat-trick in this game. Now, in the first half, Clint Irvin had to deny both Barrios and Tessman early as Dallas was coming out of the gate strong, but then Lewis hit the post, and after he hit the post there and almost gave the Rapids the early lead, the Rapids really kind of controlled this game, and I heard the announcer was basically talking about how this could be the reason because of Dallas being kind of a little bit tired. And keep in mind, Luchi Gonzalez, he actually made no changes heading into this game, and it is very rare nowadays with how, since there is pretty much a game every 3 days for each team, that you see a lot of head coach make no changes whatsoever, and that usually they would heavily rotate because of the congestion that the schedule is. But Luchi Gonzalez decided not to do it, and you can definitely saw that there was definitely some fatigue from this Dallas team. But that doesn't stop them in terms of scoring goals, because in the 40th minute, they would get the opening goal of this game, and it would be Santiago Mosquera scoring his first of what would be 3 goals in this one from Barrios and Hedges, and that has to be a backbreaker for the Rapids, because I thought up until that point the Rapids looked like they were the one that potentially get the opening goal, and then Dallas scored against the run of play, and that they scored literally right on the stroke of halftime, which, you know, when you concede a goal right there at halftime, especially you're the more dominant team, that has to feel very frustrating heading into the second half. And it seemed like that was the case, because in the second half, Dallas started the stronger side, and they would make it 2-0 in favor of them when Franco Jara, who has been red hot in these last couple of games, scored from Rito Ziegler to make it 2-0 in favor of Dallas. Then it was 3-0 in favor of Dallas after Mosquera would score his second goal in the 57th minute. Shinishiki did pull one back for the Rapids from Mosquera to make it 3-1, and at that point there might have been a little bit of a hope that the Rapids can come back into this game, that they kind of started to once again throw man forward. But Mosquera in the 78th minute would complete his hat trick to make it 4-1 in favor of FC Dallas, and also shutting the door on the Rapids of any opportunity to come back into this game. And in terms of shots in this one, 15 shots compared to 22 that the Rapids had, 7 shots on goal compared to 5 that the Rapids had, 5 shots off target compared to 11 that the Rapids had, 3 shots that was blocked compared to 6 that the Rapids had, and possession-wise, 61% possession compared to 39% possession that Dallas had. And although I didn't think the Rapids played that badly in this game, and that I think if anybody that did not watch this game and saw the scoreline felt like the Rapids completely had a big letdown, that 5-0 reserve, that wasn't really kind of the case. Although I will say that the Rapids defense, yeah, it was pretty bad in this game, and due to the fact that they can't finish in front of goal and also have a pretty bad defense is probably the reason why Dallas was able to walk out of this game big winner, and that all of a sudden Dallas have looked to be a team that is just red hot right now. And I said it before, in the first couple of games of this restart, they definitely didn't look like the same team, and it seemed now more and more that was just them trying to get back to a rhythm, and once they got into a rhythm, they looked like an unstoppable force in these last couple of games. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is the Montreal Impact, and this was a self-inflicted loss for the Montreal Impact, and a moment of madness that happened in this game basically just completely changed this one, and is the reason why the Impact lost this one, and that with this loss, Toronto FC would be the team representing the MLS side in the Canadian Championship. Now, in the first half, it was kind of a very cagey start between both of this team, which is kind of something you don't see with Vancouver games, because usually when you see Vancouver games, they usually just kind of sit into their deep shell, and that their opponent is just basically using that as kind of shooting practice against the Whitecaps, but that didn't happen. I mean, it was kind of a very cagey begin of the game, which I think that kind of favors the Whitecaps with the way that I would really love to see them to not just sit there in their deep shell and trying to hope that they can get a lucky counter-attacking break so that they can, of course, score the goal. But eventually, the first chance did came in the 31st minute, and Hassel had to call into action after he denied Okonkwo, as that was really the first real chance of the night. Hassel definitely had a bounce-back night tonight after he was kind of a little bit roughed up in the last game against the Impact. Then, in the 38th minute, this was the turning point of the game. Rudy Camacho got a straight red in this instant, and this was one of the most stupidest red card I've ever seen a player getting sent off, because while I understand that Camacho is frustrated the fact that he felt like he got fouled in the box, I don't know why in the world did he decide to retaliate, and basically as Freddie Montero was trying to help him to get up, he basically punched Montero in the leg, and basically Montero kind of went down on the ground, which, you know, there's definitely some people will say that Montero kind of went down on the ground a little bit too easily, and he kind of being a little bit theatrical in terms of that. But what in the world was Camacho thinking there in this instant? And especially nowadays, when there is definitely camera everywhere, and that referee can always go back to go to VAR to see any kind of instant. This was just absolutely stupidity from Rudy Camacho, and his stupidity is basically the reason why the Impact would eventually lose this game, because of the fact that he basically inexplicably punched Montero in the box. Vancouver gets a penalty, and Montero basically say thank you very much. He puts that one away and gives the Whitecaps a 1-0 lead. And then just 4 minutes later, Christian Dejome scored from Milinkovic to make it 2-0 in favor of the Whitecaps, as the Impact just looked like they just completely capitulated after that red card. Now, in the second half, Montreal did kind of start to regroup, and that they were looking to push one back, but at the same time they were also playing a very high line, which also played right into the hands of the Vancouver Whitecaps, because anytime when the Impact gave the ball away in the midfield, the Whitecaps just immediately counterattack, and they would allow loads of space in the back to try to attack. But eventually the Impact did get a goal back in the 70th minute when Romel Kyoto was able to score from Taidir to give a slim hope that maybe Montreal can pull this off. Remember, you know, despite the fact that they are down 2-0 in this game, they still need 3 goals in terms of trying to win this game so that they can, of course, move on to the Canadian Championship. But in the 75th minute, Diop would rob Montero a chance to put this game away at 3-1 before it was 3-1 in favor of the Whitecaps, as Montero was able to take his chances away from Owusu. But in many ways, Montero probably could have joined Santiago Mosquera as the players that got a hat-trick in tonight's action, because he basically had a wide open look from about 16 yards out, and I'm not quite sure did he just kind of got caught in two minds there, or was he just being a little bit too cute, because he basically tried to chip D up there, and he got that chip completely wrong and didn't even end up on target there. I mean, at the end of the day, I think as much as I know Montero is going to be frustrated about that, and that was the moment he could have been a hat-trick hero in this game. You know, at the end of the day, at least it's better to try that over there when your team is up 3-1 and you're up a man for the entire game, than rather do it in a game where if Montreal had a chance to basically give the Whitecaps a winner, and he basically tried to do that, yeah, he's going to get a lot of dirty looks from his teammate, and also a pretty dirty look from Mark Dos Santos in this game. But either way, the Whitecaps were able to hold on to this 3-1 victory, and the shots in this game, 13 shots compared to 14 that the Impact had, 5 shots on goal compared to 4 that the Impact has, 7 shots off target for both teams, 1 shot that was blocked compared to 3 that the Impact has, and possession-wise, 52% possession compared to 48% possession. And as I said earlier, with this loss that the Montreal Impact suffered, Toronto is going to be representing the MLS team heading into the Canadian Championship. And for the Whitecaps, you know, they, of course, are able to get another victory. That's now their second in 3 games. And you can definitely start to see there is a little bit of hope in terms of this Whitecaps team. And that I really think for the past couple of games, they have played much better than what they had in the beginning of Phase 1. But now the question is, can they continue to have a good form, and that they can maybe get something going? They can maybe think about sneaking into that playoff conversation, and that is really the only thing I get to say about it, because the West right now is just so competitive right now, and that if the Whitecaps want to sneak into that conversation, they need to continue to have more of these results in terms of the way that is going to be in the conversation. But moving on, in terms of the last match of tonight, well, if there's one team in the Western Conference that is definitely not sneaking in the conversation of the playoffs, and that team, of course, is the San Jose Quakes, where they drew 1-1 in this game against the Portland Timbers. And, you know, coming out of this game, I don't think either team is going to be happy about this result. For the Quakes, they clearly should have won this game. And this is just a game where you can clearly see this team has no confidence whatsoever, and that they look like they're back in that same mentality that they had back in 2018, where they just, once they start losing game and unable to get a win, they just have no confidence whatsoever, and that the goals look very small whenever they try to put it into the back of the net. Whereas for the Portland Timbers, it's another game where they can see late goals, and I think during this game, I think FS1 basically show a graphic showing that the Portland Timbers gave up 9 goals in the last 15 minutes of the second half. And when you gave up that many goals in the last 15 minutes of the second half, it's no wonder why this team is not doing very well this season, and that they look like they are just barely holding on into the last couple of spots of the playoffs. Now, coming into this game, both teams also elected to start a relatively weak team in this, and that both teams decided to kind of go with a rotational lineup. JT Markowski finally gets the start, and finally Almeida listened to the fans by giving JT a chance to play in this game. I didn't really made a lot of assessment of how the JT did in this game, because he didn't really was a factor in this one, and that most of the time the Quakes, since they were just so dominant going forward on the attack, and that the Timbers rarely attack in our opposing end, I didn't really get a good read of whether or not if he was a little bit better than what Vega is in the back of the net. And also, Jacob Akinrich get his first MLS start and get his debut, and again, there wasn't really a lot of read I can get with this youngster, because again, the defense in this game, I'm going to say that besides that mistake that they had in the first half that ultimately cost us a goal in this game, and potentially could have cost us all 3 points in this one, the defense didn't really had a lot of work in this game, because the Timbers were just kind of elected to just sit back and hope that they can maybe get a point out of this game. Now, as I said before, the Quakes, they seemed like they had all the chances early in this game, but again, just lack of creativity and finishing is the reason why they got the opening goal in the first 30 minutes of this game. And those lack of finishing was evidenced because in the 26th minute, Espinoza had a screamer that just went wide off the net, and then Steve Clark had to make a big save on Youngworth after he kind of redeemed himself after the free kick was coming into the box, and he kind of spilled that free kick catch, which Youngworth, that is one that even as a defender, you got to put that one in to the back of the net. Like, you are literally 2 yards out from the back post. You shouldn't be able to just hit it right to the goalkeeper, but instead just puts it into the back of the net. But at that point, it remains 0-0 at that. And then in the 33rd minute, this is where I go back to talk about the Quakes defense make that one crucial mistake, and this mistake was in the 33rd minute when Jimmy Chara was able to score from Diego Chara. So the Chara brother, for once, were able to be in the combination in terms of the attack and also the goal scoring. And that not only the fact that this was completely against the run of plays, but because of the fact that we gave the ball away sloppily in the midfield, and that Jimmy Chara completely destroyed Paul Murray on the pace department. That was the reason why the Timbers were able to be up 1-0 at that point. And then 4 minutes later, Vaco hits the post. Then he had a chance to basically put it from close range, but he missed the target there. And up until that point, I just had a feeling this is not going to be the Quakes night, is it? I mean, this is going to be one of those nights where we're going to have bunch of chances, and we just couldn't put the ball into the back of the net because there's just no finishing quality in this team. Now, in the second half, Mark Sinkowski had to make a big save to rob Niskoda there, and that was really one of the few chances that the Timbers had, and probably the only save that Mark Sinkowski, of course, had to make. I mean, the goal that he conceded, there wasn't really much that he can do about that, but it was a decent save that he had on Niskoda's shot, and that if that one went in, then I have a feeling the Timbers were able to walk away with 3 points and partially maybe steal this one with the way that they weren't really attacking a lot and was just sitting in the deep shell. Which, speaking of which, the Quakes, again, they continue to search for the equalizer and continue to try to break down this Timbers low block, but again, just no quality whatsoever in the final third. And you would think that for most of the game, when the Quakes just lack quality in the final third, that I would be just screaming my lungs out with the way how bad the team looked in the final third. But really, I wasn't that way, and I just kind of feel like, well, this is what it gets. I mean, I've seen this before, and it's just getting to a point where I don't really need to be frustrated with it, because this is just the reality of how the Quakes have been this season, and that it is pretty clear that during the offseason, besides the fact that we need to improve our defense, there's got to be another list of priority that we need to improve the attack, especially getting a number 10 player that can actually create for us going forward on the attack. Now, eventually the Quakes did score a goal, and I was kind of surprised we were eventually going to score a goal, because I think right about the 70th minute mark, I kind of gave up hope the fact that the Quakes were ever going to score a goal. But they did in the 76th minute, and it was Vaco that was able to score this goal, and Zaparic almost cleared this one off the line, and originally it looked like he did clear off the line, because there was no whistle whatsoever whether or not if that was a goal or not, and they just continued to play. But then 30 seconds later, the referee eventually stopped the game, took a quick glance at the monitor, and then later changed his decision, and that of course was a goal, and the game was tied up at 1 apiece. Now, in the 82nd minute, K. Cal almost become the hero in this game when he had a free header from 6 yards out, but of course just missed wide. I'm not really going to give too much of a stick on K. Cal for missing that, because remember, he's only a 16-year-old kid, and you can definitely see the raw talent that he has, but certainly that is one that I think he's going to have to learn in terms of bury it away, because that was a big chance for the Quakes to potentially take the lead. Then in the 84th minute, I thought the referee made a terrible decision when the Quakes were going on the attacking end, and I believe it was Jackson Yu that was feeding the ball to K. Cal, who was basically through on goal, and yet for whatever reason the referee decided to call that one back, and that there was no advantage play in that one. And yeah, I can understand then a lot of Quakes fans are going to be frustrated about that. I was also personally frustrated too, because that is just something that you just have to play advantage to that, and that there shouldn't be a whistle there when the Quakes had a big, glorious opportunity to potentially take the lead. Then in the 88th minute, Clark with Rob Wando on the header to keep this one a tie game, and that was really the last opportunity that the Quakes would have in this game, as in the end it finished 1-1 between both of these teams. Shots in this game, 19 shots compared to 6 that the Timbers had, 6 shots on goal compared to 3 that the Timbers had, 8 shots off target compared to 2 that the Timbers had, 5 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that the Timbers had, and possession wise 64% possession compared to 36% possession that the Portland Timbers had in this game. And for the Quakes, because Vancouver were able to win this game, they're now back to being rock bottom in the Western Conference. And unless, if this team somehow get a really kick up their butt and that they can finally start to rediscover that winning feeling that they had in the MLS's back tournament, this is going to be a long season for the Quakes. And I mean, this is why this was kind of the other reason why I didn't really get emotionally kind of attached and just kind of screaming my lungs out whenever they look poor on the final third, because I just feel like this has started to be a lost cause for the Quakes, and that unless if somehow in some way they can start to turn around and just kind of did what they did last season minus the last 6 games of the season where they finally turned around after they lost 4 in a row to start the season, I just don't see any way back for the Quakes in this game, and that it's going to take a miracle for them to get back into playoff contention. And as for the Timbers, as I said, you know, they will be disappointed the fact that they dropped points again, and yet they let one get away with the way that they concede a late goal. But I guess maybe on the plus side is that this is a rotational squad for the Timbers, and that it always felt like this was a game they were trying to get a point out of this game, which they were able to do. But I'm also going to say a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Quakes just cannot finish their chances if their life actually depends on it. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for the review of this video. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of all 3 of these games. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.